What's up, everybody? Welcome to Dharius Daniels Television. I'm Dharius Daniels, lead pastor of Change Church, and we're located right in central New Jersey, right in Ewing, that's outside of Princeton, and we have a site right in West Hampton, which is in South Jersey, headed toward the Philadelphia Cherry Hill area. So excited about this opportunity to come into your homes with God's Word. You know, we pride ourselves on delivering Monday messages. What does that mean, Pastor Dharius? It simply means that we want the messages you receive on Sunday to apply to your life on Monday. We believe today's message is just that. I'm going to take you right into the auditorium of Change Church, where I taught a message to our spiritual family, our congregation, called The Art of War. This message is a part of a 2-month series that I walked our congregation through called Gladiator. And I'm going to tell you now, it's going to serve you well to get this entire series. I noticed something that was absent in the spiritual formation of many people. I noticed that churches had taught people how to serve, how to give, how to worship, but we had not taught them how to suffer. And we have not taught you how to fight. Life happens to all of us. And if you aren't prepared, it's too late to get ready when it's time to be ready. And this series is going throughout the book of Judges and teaching us biblical principles on how to fight with skill and not just will. I want you to enjoy this message. I'll be back in a few minutes. It's called The Art of War. These are the nations that the Lord left to test all those Israelites who had not experienced any of the wars in Canaan. He did this only to teach warfare to the descendants of the Israelites who had not had previous battle experience. Are you catching this? So you see, this is not the generation that had experienced the Exodus out of Egypt. This is not the generation that knew what it was like to have to depend on manna to fall from heaven and from water to come out of a rock. This is not a generation that had to depend on God to part a Red Sea. This is a generation that was born in Canaan. They were born in blessing. They were a generation that was born experiencing fruit they didn't have to labor for. Did you hear what I said? Yeah, they didn't know struggle, they didn't know lack, they just knew Xbox Ones and Nintendo Switches and PlayStation 4s, and they knew Jordans, they knew their own rooms, they knew their own televisions, they knew remote controls. They don't know what it's like to be a remote control. They know what it's like to have a remote control, but not be a remote control. You know what it means to be a remote control? It means when you're sitting on the couch and the grown-ups tell you to get up and go change the channel. That's what it means to be a remote control. This generation grew up in Canaan. And the Bible says, listen to this, God left some nations around to teach them skills in the art of war that they didn't have, because they didn't have to fight to get it. But God knows whatever, listen to this, whatever is possessed must be protected. Whatever is gained must be maintained. So even if you didn't fight to get it, you have to fight to keep it, because whatever you have, the devil's coming after. If you have peace, he's coming after it. If you have joy, he's coming after it. Is there anyone here that's honest enough to say, I know what it's like to have joy and lose it. I know what it's like to have peace and lose it. I know what it's like to have focus and lose it. Because whatever you have, the enemy is coming after. And if I don't know how to fight to protect it, I will not maintain what I've gained. And Jesus does not just want us to have fruitful lives. He says very clearly in the Gospel of John that he prays not only that we have fruit, but that our fruit would remain. It's one thing to have it. It's another thing to keep it. God said, I left these trials around
so I could train these people in these skills they needed so that they could fight to keep what they possess. Because nothing trains you like a trial. You don't learn prayer in a sermon. You learn prayer under pressure. You learn the principles of prayer through a sermon. You learn the practice, the principle of prayer in a sermon. You learn the practices of prayer when you're under pressure and your back is up against the wall and you cannot within your own ingenuity figure out how you're going to work this out. So you have to place yourself at the mercy of a deity who is able to intervene into the affairs of your existence and orchestrate all things according to the counsel of his own will. You learn how to pray when you're in trouble. You learn how to pray late at night. You learn how to pray when your back is up against the wall. Nothing trains you like a trial. So we got to learn the difference between knowledge and training. Because some people have knowledge, but they're not trained. Because nothing trains you like a trial. Am I making sense? I said, am I making sense? So the Bible says God specifically, if you look at verse 1, there's specific nations he leaves around in their proximity. Specific nations he leaves around in their proximity because he wants this generation to be trained. So they hadn't experienced this before. So they're all unnerved and undone. God, metaphorically speaking, is sitting in heaven with his legs crossed, laughing, saying it's just training. Did you hear what I said? They think their lives are taking a downward spiral and headed in a downward trajectory, and it's never going to recover. And God's like, this is just training. They're just in class. This is just a test. This is just a test. This is not a real emergency. This is just a test. God, I love this. God picked these specific nations to use these nations to engage Israel in what I call bear battles. What are bear battles? It's based on a biblical character named David, who before he engaged in battle with Goliath, he was having a conversation with the king who gave him permission to fight Goliath. And the king was asking him, what qualifies you to fight this giant who's been trained in military warfare his whole life? And David said, well, while I was tending to my father's sheep, there was a lion and a bear that came in an attempt to take some of the sheep. And I protected my father's sheep from the lion and the bear. And the same God that delivered me out of the hand of the lion and the bear is the same God that will deliver this Philistine into my hands. See, some battles are bear battles. They're not battles that are intended to take you out. They're battles that are intended to cultivate in you the confidence that you need to face a Goliath when you face him. See, the only reason David had confidence to fight Goliath was because that confidence was cultivated in what he saw God do with the bear. And he said, if God can do this with the bear, the same God can do it with the giant. Is there anybody that can look back over your life and see bear battles? Things that agitated you but educated you at the same time. When you were in them, they were agitating. But then once you got out of them and you look back, you saw that was education. Right? That's interesting. But Bible also says something in verse 4. It says, they were also left to test the Israelites to see whether or not they would obey the Lord's commands, which he had given their ancestors through Moses. This is really interesting to me. So he leaves the enemies there. Number one, teach them the war. But number two is interesting. It says to see if they would obey the commandments. Now, why do they need enemies to obey? Could it be because God realizes that real commitment is only revealed during times of inconvenience? that it's easy to say you're with me when it costs you nothing to be with me. But real commitment is revealed and embodied and expressed in a God who needs nothing, wrapping himself in flesh, coming down to earth, walking 33 years, going to a cross, being wrongfully convicted, going to a grave, staying there 3 days, getting up. Watch this, real commitment reveals itself in inconvenience. And could it be that God was using inconvenience and battles, watch this, not to show him something that he already knows, but to show them something? Does that make sense? Could it be that trouble really shows you stuff that's buried deep, that's not visible on the surface? But just because it's deep doesn't mean it's not dangerous. Did you hear what I said? Yeah, because there's nothing that shows you what's in you like pain. Hit your toe and see what you say. Okay, I don't know. I thought I was at the 12 o'clock service. I said, hit your toe and see what you say. Pain will show you things that are present that you didn't know. And whenever God shows us something like this, he's never showing us this just to critique or condemn us. He's showing us this because he knows this needs to be exposed before we move to another season, operating under an illusion that we're in a place we actually aren't. So if there's a place in my life that's weak, he's not showing it to me just to point the finger at me and say you're weak. He's showing it to me because there's something in my future that requires that I be strong in the place that I'm weak. So he says, let me show this to you now so you don't run up on Goliath thinking you're better with your rock than you actually are. So I'm going to let you miss in this season. And if you can get over your ego, and if you can get over your embarrassment, and if you'll learn the lesson, when you get to the next season, you would have fixed the area that would have made you vulnerable, because you would have built the ark before it started raining. Do you receive that? Somebody say, show me, Lord. Show me. I'm so past my ego and what people think about me and what I thought about myself. Show me. Don't let me walk blindly into something I'm not ready for. Show me. Don't let me think I'm stronger than I am and I take on more than I can bear and it crushes me. Show me. Don't make me think people around me are rock solid when they're shifting sand. Show me. Y'all aren't talking to me today. I want you to show me. It may hurt my feelings, but show me. It may hurt my ego, but show me. I may be surprised, but show me. I'd rather you show me now than me find out the hard way later. Show me. So see your trials as training. If you don't see the trial as training, you won't make sure that you leave it with something. If I'm going to go through all of this, I need to leave it with something. I need a lesson, some wisdom, some strength, or something. Come on, somebody. I'm not a baby. I don't cry just to cry anymore. If I'm crying, I need to get something from these tears. You said if I sow in tears, I'll reap in joy. If I'm crying, I need something from this. If I'm coming out of Egypt, I don't want to come out empty-handed. Do I have any people in this place that are feeling me? Okay, so that's number one. See the trial as training. See the trial as training. All right, number two, you ready for number two? I said, you ready for number two? All right, it's in verses 5 and 6. Number two is, don't miss the snake looking for the lion. Don't miss the snake looking for the lion. The enemy shows up. Well, I'll put it this way. The Bible uses two animal metaphors to describe the enemy. In the New Testament, Peter uses the example of the lion. He said the enemy is a roaring lion. Right? seeking whom he may devour. Is that true? But also in the Old Testament, the enemy shows up, whether literally or metaphorically, that's non-consequential. He shows up in the garden as a snake. So you got a lion and a snake. You can't miss a lion, but you can miss a snake. But both of them can kill you. And so sometimes we're getting killed because you're missing the little thing, because you only think danger shows up in the form of big things. A lion roars, a snake hisses. You won't miss a roar, but you'll miss a hiss. And you can end up getting bit because you missed the hiss. But then after you get bit, some of us can look back over our life that's been snake bit and say, you know what, now that I think about it, I heard the hiss, I just didn't pay attention to it. I saw some signs, stuff I just looked over, I didn't pay attention to. I just chalked it up as not a big deal. Then I realized I heard the hiss, but I missed it. Pastor, where's that in the text? It's in verses 5 and 6. The Israelites lived among the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Look at this. Verse 6 says, and they took their daughters in marriage and gave their own daughters to their sons and served their gods. So it just seems so innocent and so normal, right? Because everybody just with each other. We just happy and everybody getting married. It's just, right? Not realizing it's some hissing going on there, right? Not realizing God's like, no, you let your boundaries down. You're adopting the value system of the people you're in a relationship with. They're influencing you. You should be influencing them, but they're influencing you. And so now you're violating your value system and you're adopting their values. And the values that you ought to live by are fences that protect you. And so when you violate those values, you make yourself vulnerable to stuff that you wouldn't be vulnerable to if you didn't violate those values. And here it is. It just seems so amazing. Here they are serving their gods. They didn't even know it. They ended up serving their gods because they missed the snake, looking for the lion. Catch now the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vine. It's not always the big things that get you. Sometimes it's the little things. You better be careful. When somebody you have in your space is always bringing you information from access they got to somebody else's space, that's some hissing. Okay. Yeah, if they will talk to you about everybody else, they will talk about you to everybody. That's some hissing. Yeah, okay. Does that make sense? I said, does that make sense? Okay, you ready for number 3? Here's number 3. Okay. Number 3, you must war to rest. You must war to rest, but only engage when authorized. Here it is. Israel violates their values. This is verses 7 through 11. Israel violates their values. They end up in idolatry, which is ultimately you adopting allegiance to a value system that is different and distinct from, you've made it preeminent to, superior to, your allegiance to God and the value system that he's laid out for us to live by. Watch this. So this is what happens. They end up captured for 8 years. God raises up a judge, listen to this, who is willing to engage the enemies that are holding them hostage. And verse 11 ends by saying this. It ends by saying they had rest for 40 years. They were held captive 8 years. He was willing to fight for a number of days. And he got to rest for a number of years. Because there are some things that are in the way of our advancement that you can't ignore. Some stuff you can't pray away. You got to address. Sometimes prolonging the conversation is just prolonging the problem. You won't be able to rest until you war. And I know that's tough, Because many of us are conflict adverse and we live passively aggressively. And we don't want to deal with what needs to be dealt with. But if you don't deal with what needs to be dealt with, what needs to be dealt with will eventually deal with you. Am I making sense? I said, am I making sense? Sometimes you got a war to rest because the thing that's winning the war against you is keeping you from experiencing the rest you want to experience. Sometimes you got a war against procrastination because it's only when you war against it and win that you'll be able to rest. Because procrastination is robbing you of the ability to rest because you keep putting off what needs to be done. And because you keep putting it off doesn't mean it's going to get done. Putting it off doesn't get it done. It doesn't get done until you do it. But you won't be able to rest by putting it off, because knowing that you still have to do it is always on your mind. And so until you war against that and win, you will not be able to rest. Putting off the conversation doesn't give you rest because you know you got to have the conversation. And that conversation is always on your mind. And it's only when you have the conversation that you're going to be able to rest, because sometimes you got a war to rest. Yeah. You can't have anything healthy without being able to war against the things that get in the way of its health. You can't have health and be afraid of bloodshed. I'm going to leave that alone too. Right? But I want you to see something. But I need discernment so that I don't go around trying to address everything and fight every battle. So I need to only engage when authorized. I need to do what David did in 1 Samuel 23, verse 1. It says, when David was told, look, the Philistines are fighting against Keilah and are looting the threshing floor, he inquired of the Lord and said, shall I go and attack these Philistines? And the Lord answered him, go and attack the Philistines. Y'all see that? So he inquired of God, is this something I should engage in? And the Lord gave him the go-ahead, so he did it, because God only backs battles he sends you into. If you go on your own, you're on your own. Does that make sense? Only engage when authorized. There's another major example of this in Leviticus chapter 2. Moses' brother named Aaron had some sons, Nadab and Abihu. They took their censers, they put fire in them and added incense, and they offered unauthorized fire before the Lord, contrary to his command. So fire came out from the presence of the Lord and consumed them. They saw their daddy do it, they've seen others do it, and they're like, I can do that, I know how to do that, not realizing that the effectiveness was not just in the activity. The effectiveness was in the fact that Aaron was authorized. And you can emulate things you're not authorized to do. And to the Lord, it smells like strange fire. Right, so, are y'all hearing me? See, it's dangerous to follow words God didn't give you. That's what Pharaoh tried to do when he drowned. He saw Moses and Israel walk through on dry ground, and he said, well, they did it with bare feet. I've got chariots, I've got horses. So if they can do it, certainly I can do it, because I've got more than they have. But you didn't have their word. I don't hear anybody say anything. So God may tell somebody to have a career change and to walk away from steady employment, right? Steady income for steady bills. He may tell them walk away from steady employment and walk out on faith. And then somebody else can see that and say, well, I've got chariots and I've got education and I got contacts and I'm smarter than them and they not smarter than me. And you jump out there and it don't turn out the same way. They walk through and you drown. Why? Because they had a word. They were authorized. I know we don't like this kind of preaching in 2017. They were authorized.
Listen. I hope that this message added value to your life. Listen to me. I want you to listen to me now. I want you to listen to me. Life happens. And I believe someone who's watching this broadcast, you're in one of those battles. You're in one of those seasons right now. You feel like you're warring for your sanity. Some of you feel like you're warring for your relationships. Some of you feel like you're fighting for your career. Others, you feel like you're fighting for your children. Someone may feel like you're fighting for your future. I want to tell you, you don't win some battles with willpower. You win some battles with wisdom. It's not just about strength. It's about skill. And God has given us a training manual. It's His Bible. And that training manual will equip us with the know-how and the wherewithal to be able to win in a way that we come out of what we're facing, stepping into God's best for our life and being the best version of ourselves. You know, it's one thing to come out of something, but I've learned not just to ask, did you come out? I've learned to ask, how did you come out? What condition are you in? And this series, I believe, is going to help you come out. This series is going to give you the wisdom you need to win. I want to encourage you right now. You can turn me off if you want to. You can go right to our website, or you can call this number on the screen. We want to rush this entire Gladiator series to you. It blessed our church, and I believe it will bless your life. I also want you to pray about becoming a partner with Dharius Daniels Ministries, helping us continue to take this Monday message and to spread it all around the world. You can go to our website and find out what partnership is all about. When you partner with what God is doing with this ministry, God sees you as a player on this team. He sees you playing a role that is just as vital as the role that I play, because the message that God has given us cannot reach the world without your support. Jesus had those who partnered with him in ministry. And I'm asking to partner with what God is doing in and through this ministry and help us spread it all around the world. We resource those that resource this ministry. We bless those that bless this ministry. And we have special exclusive resources that we want to get to you when you become a partner with Dharius Daniels Television. All of the information is right there on our website. You can give us a call. We'll be glad to serve you. And I look forward to seeing what God's going to do as we continue to partner and take this gospel message all around the world. God is changing your life, and He wants to use your life to change the world. Take care. God bless. I'll see you next time.
Join us same time next week for another insightful and practical teaching from Dr. Dharius Daniels. For additional information and resources, visit us online
at DhariusDaniels.com.
And when you visit, please consider partnering with our ministry, as our mission is to take this life-changing message to all nations. Our desire is to reach and positively impact the masses with this life-giving Word of God. However, we can only do this with your dedicated support. So we thank you in advance. And feel free to connect daily with Dr. Daniels' expanding social media family and become a part of an incredible and enlightening move of God. So thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next week for another awe-inspiring word from Dr. Dharius Daniels.